Get stacking.
Triple threat.
Expected value. Now take what you learn, go out there, and get stacked.
What up, Gripsters and random YouTubers? Evan here for Grips.com with yet another multi-table tournament review. I got a pretty impressive email last week from a Gripster who won the $1 rebuy 3x turbo on PokerStars for $15,000. That's correct, a $1 rebuy tournament that pays 15 G's. You may be familiar with this tournament, the one that has like 10,000 players and goes really fast. And you may think, well, it's a total crapshoot, anyone can win. How can we really expect to learn something from a review where it's going to be a lot of shoving, possibly a lot of sucking out? I haven't looked at the hands yet, so I don't know if that's going to be the case. But what I want to mention, and the reason I've selected this hand history to review, is that not only did he win the afternoon event, the 60K guaranteed for 15K, but later in the same week, he won the evening version of it, which is again a $1 rebuy 3x turbo with 30K guaranteed for another 5K. So in a span of a week where he could have played this event at most 14 times, he managed to win it twice. And what's most impressive to me about this feat is that Tenet, hopefully I pronounced that right, who is our star for this series, won both these tournaments without the use of any poker tracking software. I think it's important to mention that software can enhance your ability to play and allow you to develop reads while playing multiple tables. It should be used as an enhancer, not a crutch. Your default, your baseline decisions should be made based on your gut instinct, not based on what the statistics are telling you. There is no substitute for paying full attention to the action and getting to know your opponents. Hopefully we'll see some of that in this series. So just briefly to outline what the 3x turbo is, I've got it open here on Stars. It's a $1 rebuy where you get like 3K chips per bullet, but the add-on is 30,000 chips. So unless you build up a massive stack in the early going of this tournament, it's not a big deal. You take the add-on and then you just kind of go from there and see if you can spin your stack up. Structure is 5-minute levels, and I think some levels are skipped. Actually, they have a lot of them. But huge paying tournament, huge payout for a $1 investment. I mean, usually it ends up being $5, $10, $20 that you'll get in for in this tournament. But the payout is extremely huge. The structure is extremely fast, which requires some different strategy. And hopefully we'll see some of that in the video. Anyway, we'll start with the action right away. And I've played this tournament a few times as well. My approach in the early stages is to play really big pots as much as possible with any sort of reasonable strength holding. The fact is, when you're playing a $1 tournament, a lot of people are just in for that dollar. They're just looking to blow it off, looking for some quick action. They're ready to gamble. They are ready to play. So don't worry about slow playing. Don't worry about trapping your opponents, getting tricky. In the early stages, just play straightforward. Try to play as big of pots as possible as you can when you have a hand that has any sort of reasonable equity. That means trying to get it in pre-flop when you get dealt a premium. Even a slightly less than premium is generally going to be good enough to get it in pre-flop. And when you flop top pair or better in the early stages, you want to play it hard and fast. There is really not much need to slow play because people just know nothing about bet sizing, as you'll see here. They over-raise, they overplay. So yeah. Now, that being said, you still want to play a sound pre-flop strategy, not raising too loose from early position and not peeling too wide versus people's raises, because stacks do get shallow rather quickly. but you want to see as many flops as possible with the appropriate holdings, with the small pairs, with the stronger suited connectors, and you want to play a lot of multi-way pots because your implied odds in the early going are just insane. Now, the strategy post-rebuy period is definitely very different, but for that first, I think it's hour that the tournament's running, your goal is to build as big of a stack as possible. Like a hand like this Queen Jack suited, you could open rip it for 15 big blinds. It may be slightly on the higher variance style, but the fact is, at the end of this tournament, there are like 600 million chips in play. So it's important to try to build your stack early because you have a lot of chips to win. The other thing about this tournament is that the blinds go up very quickly. And so if you're a short stack or a medium-sized stack, you're going to have to do a lot of gambling. Now, you should probably know from watching previous videos that when playing multi-table tournaments, you do have to gamble and you don't want to pass up on edges. But if possible, you want to avoid gambling situations as much as possible. So if you can build up a big stack and just kind of steal your way to the end rather than having to play all-in poker, showdown poker, that's going to do a lot in terms of increasing your frequency of going deep and your chances of winning. Here with Ace Queen, I definitely think we should be 3-betting and trying to get this in. It's a premium hand, and in the early stages, it's still pre-rebuy period. Like, let's go. Our stack is 13K, but unless your stack is like 40K, 50K plus, it's not time to slow down yet. There's definitely a point in the rebuy period where if you built a big enough stack, you should be less inclined to gamble. In this particular tournament, as I said, it's like 40, 50K is when you think about slowing down. In tournaments that aren't so fast-paced or where the field isn't so big and you don't need to win as many chips to ultimately win the tournament, that number will be lower. So like I would say, like in a $3 rebuy, gamble to try to get that double up, or a $5 rebuy, gamble to try to get that double up. But once you have that double up, it's okay to play a little more cautious and a little more kind of protect your stack poker. Although I talk about you want to do a lot of gambling, I think calling an 11 big blind shove with a baby ace is not really necessary. Here I would like to have a hand like ace 8 or better, and like probably like king jack. If you just think about what hands he's going to be shoving from the button, yes, he's going to be shoving a lot of hands that are worse than ace high, but how far ahead are you with the ace high? We compare it to our pot odds, 42%, and just don't know that overall we have that, and it's just kind of an unnecessary flip to take. I encourage a lot of shoving in the early stages of this tournament and fast playing, but in terms of like calling off, I don't think thin spots are super necessary to take. Anyway, I'm skipping through these hands because there's a lot of folding, which it's all good. This tournament doesn't really get started until the rebuy period is over. This is a spot where it's a lot of players to shove into. There is a lot of dead money in the pot, but it's a little bit early position to be shoving king 10 offsuit. Something like king queen suited, let's go all day. King 10 suited, it gets interesting. And here's a spot where T-Mans is just going for it with the pair. And I think with his stack only being like 10K to start the hand, and the fact that a double rebuy gets him right back to 6K, makes this gamble totally fine. Whereas before, when he was up to 30K, calling off and getting back down to that 10K stack isn't exactly ideal. All right, so jamming out with the ace jack, called by ace 7. Cool. And we're still in the rebuy period. It's a spot where I think for 1.5 chips, calling is fine. And ISOing the all-in, you know what? I think that's even better. We can assume that if someone had a hand much stronger than ace-9, they would probably isolate this shover who effectively limped for a big blind. So seeing that, we have two options. We can call, take our 10-1, and run the hand like 5 ways, which isn't really the best with ace-9 offsuit, or we can try to isolate, jam, and risk 1.6 to win, 15K, take that 9-1, but only have to run our equity against one opponent. Remember, ace-9 against a random hand, it's in pretty good shape. But for every additional player that comes into the pot, your winning chances are going to be decreased. So I do like this ISO very much, and we do lose the all-in, but hey, we got amazing odds on our money, and our winning chances were way higher than they would have been had we taken the pot 5-way. And of course, just as a brief side note, LOL at putting it in with 6-3 suited. I know it's only $1, but come on, bro. 6 high into the field. You really think it's gonna fly? 5s, I like the jam. We end up running into a bigger hand, but again, in this rebuy period, we are trying to shove, we are trying to build a stack, because we can rebuy and get right back to 6K, and then double up back to 17. And it's important with these types of tournaments. I've been getting some questions about rebuy tournaments and strategies and stuff. When you play a tournament like this, your goal should not be to be in for the minimum amount. Like if you're playing this $1 3x turbo and hoping to be in for $3, you're probably better off playing like a $3 freeze out. Because to maximize your expectation, your chance at getting the big payout and like really realizing your return on investment and getting the most out of your playtime in this tournament, you have to be willing to gamble and fire multiple bullets. That's the whole point of the rebuy period. Yeah, and always be ready to take the 30K add-on. Always have $1 behind for that. If you do not have the money in your account to do that, you should definitely not play this tournament. Okay, so the add-on period has now happened. There are no more rebuys, and now the strategy changes a little bit. We're still going to want to shove aggressively. We're still going to want to steal aggressively and try to build up a stack. But in those spots where it's really close whether or not to shove it in or fold, like the expectation between the two options is similar, we'll be a bit more inclined to lean towards the conservative approach of passing up on the close spot and maintaining our stack. Whereas during the rebuy period, you want to take absolutely every spot that's profitable, even if it's like for 0.1 of a chip, because you're not losing money doing the play, and you're not really lowering your expectation of winning the tournament, because you lose the hand, you don't bust out, you just rebuy, you take another chance. So now I'm going to slow things down a tiny bit now that we're in the real part of the tournament, and I hope I did a decent job explaining general strategy for this format. Any questions, just post them below the video. I'll be happy to look at them. So here we got a cutoff open, and we have an ace. Let's look at how much there is in the middle. There is 13K in the middle. We're increasing our stack by about between 25 and 30% if we are able to pull this. And with it being this early in the tournament, and with us being so far away from the finish line, it makes sense for us to try to find spots where we can chip up. A lot of these spots are going, when we're on this sort of stack size, 15 to 25 big blinds, are going to come from spots where we identify someone as opening a wide range of hands, and therefore they are going to be folding to aggressive action very frequently. Button opens are typically the loosest. I talked about small blind opens in the previous series, and cutoff opens also are going to generally be pretty loose. So in a spot like this, where we're on the button and we're facing what's probably a wide cutoff open, getting aggressive and making a play here with the ace-5 suit, with the ace-5, is perfectly fine. The more likely you are to be called, the more you should be willing to wait for like a stronger hand. So, you know, like against a guy who's probably going to call you pretty frequently, you probably want something like ace-jack, ace-10, king-queen. But if you think your fold equity is very high, then any excuse of a hand is fine to get all in with. So ace-rag, we got our blocker. That's the thing that pushes this over the edge. The main reason this is a fine play is that the cutoff's opening wide. We only have to get through the 2 players in the blind. We have a blocker with the ace, and worst case, we have the equity of an ace, which is, you know, always like 30% against an average range. And at this stage in the tournament, taking close spots and being willing to go for suckouts, it's perfectly fine. This ace-king, I think I would prefer a min-raise to allow other players to come over the top, exactly the same as what happened last hand. If this were during the rebuy period, open shove, that's totally cool. Post-rebuy period, though, I think you need to try to get, you have to play a little more creative to get max value from your hands. Just taking the open jamming approach isn't going to be as effective, because once people have made it past the add-on stage of the tournament, they're going to value their tournament life more and therefore be less inclined to just call you off with whatever they've got. Okay. So we'll do a little folding. The deuces could be shoved if folded to. Let's see what happens here. This is a hand where we really want to see a flop, but facing a 3x raise, having to call off 20% of our chips, it's okay to just let it go. It can be tough to overcome the urge to see flops with, you know, good-looking hands. We call this pretty hand syndrome. But the fact is, when you're on shallow stacks in tournaments, you have to be very selective of the hands you play, because every hand you play could be the end of your tournament. This king-queen suited is pretty much the same thing. It's a spot where it's tempting to put it all in. You know, we started the hand with 7 big blinds. King-queen suited does very well in all-in situations. But once we put 40K in the middle, there'll be about 80K in the pot. This guy's going to be getting amazing odds. We know he's never folding. So the question is, how does king-queen suited do against his opening range? If he's a loose player, it probably runs fine. You know, we'll have a decent chance of winning. But if he's a tight player, we're actually not in awesome shape with king-queen suited. And based on the fact that he's opening off with 14 big blind stack, he's a little more likely to not be on the loose side. So T-man's with the folds, and we see that flop, we're like, damn, should have seen it. But let's see what our opponent had. Ace-4. I think against someone who's opening ace-4, shoving king-queen suited, perfectly fine, but we didn't have that information. Okay. Don't want to call off with dem rags. Oh, hell no. And finally, we got the kings. We got them motherfucking kings. This man ain't never folding. We're all in. 3-way all in. And isolated by the draw. Cool. It's actually kind of funny that this guy isolates with the 6-7 here. This is worth talking about. In a dry side pot situation, he needs to beat our hand to win the pot, no matter what. If he can't beat us, he can't win the pot. So he's going to need to make his draw, or at least a pair, to have any shot at beating us anyway. With 7 high, you know, he's not winning the pot off us. So he might as well see the turn and river for free before putting money in. If he had like a queen, I could understand wanting to protect it. But given that he needs to make his hand anyway, the value he gains from knocking the other opponent out of the pot isn't really all that significant. What he does gain is that maybe he can make St. Diego fold an 8, and then if he hits a 6 or 7, he can win the pot. But I don't think that's enough to warrant throwing chips in the middle. And obviously if St. Diego has a queen, he's not folding and then forced to call off your whole stack with the draw. Anyway, we got the triple, and blinds are already, as you can see, going up very quickly. This queen-jack offsuit, I'm fine with the fold. I think suited, it's a tempting spot to ship her in. And if we were in later position, we could shove that. It's very important to be positionally aware when deciding what hands you shove. Because a hand like this, King 9 offsuit, well, on the button that's an easy shove, but under the gun it is an easy fold. So yeah, sometimes people say like, well, do you shove this hand? Well, who's behind? How many players are left to act? Are they people who like to call a lot? Are they people who prefer to fold a lot? These are the things that we need to consider. Looks like we'll be playing this with 6 big blinds. I think shover folding really is the only way to go. And we do the same with our aces. Hold up against 10s. Fantastic. We get a walk. Always nice. And with Jack 9, this is definitely a strong enough hand to come in for a raise. Now, once you get over the kind of 12 big blind mark, there is some room to now mix in small raises. In this tournament, you don't need to just shove every hand. You do want to have some post-flop play as well, some other moves in your arsenal. So it's good. We're going to be seeing some of this. Now here's a tough spot. Certainly, we are getting really good odds pre-flop, 3.7 to 1. So we definitely have good enough winning chances to play this hand. I don't know what Roughneck's deal is. If he's a loose player, you know, having started the hand with 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 big blinds, we shouldn't really be looking to fold this hand. The only way we'd want to fold is if he's like super nitty and is 3-betting with a range of, you know, 9s plus, ace, king, ace, queen. If he's ever 3-bet bluffing, we need to play this hand. With that being said, there's always the option to call, and if we flop equity, just not fold, like we do here. We take our odds. If we break the flop, we fold, and once we hit an ace, well, we're definitely going to be going with the hand. Opponent has jacks, and good thing that jack didn't come, right? I do like that T-Mans didn't just get it in pre-flop, though. I think that's a really important thing to separate in this situation. So when your opponent's laying you really good odds, and you're willing to go with the hand if you flop well, it's fine. You can see 3 cards, and if those 3 cards look like it's, you know, kind of an above average flop for your hand, like for ace-jack, 5, 6, 7 would be a very below average flop for our hand, but ace, 8, 5 is an above average flop for our hand. On the above average flops, you go with it, and on the below average flops, you get away. That way, instead of investing your whole stack to see all 5 cards, you invest 2 more big blinds, take a really good price, and continue on the boards where you're likely to have one of those above average runouts on all 5 cards. I mean, you get to see 60% of the board right away, so why not see 60% of the board for 2 bigs rather than 100% for all your bigs are belong to him. And that puts us up to decent little chip stack. And what do you guys call off with here when someone shoves 12 big blinds into you? What queens, what kings, what aces, pairs? Think about it. Because that's a spot where there's a lot of value to be had, knowing just how wide you can call off against someone who has a wide range. Because let's just look at the math real quick. We need 44% equity. And if you take an opponent who is shoving pretty wide, you may be surprised at what kind of hands have decent equity against that. Let's equilab it just to see, you know, just for fun. Let's learn. Let's say this guy's shoving real wide, 50%. Why did that not work? 50%. There we go. Okay, so he's shoving, let's say he's shoving something like this, and some players are going to be shoving even wider. JT. Call. Queen 10 off. Yep. Let's try the actual hand we have. Queen 8. Slightly losing, but I guess that would make Queen 9. Call. Yep. And I think King 7 is probably fine. Yeah. Those are just my guesses, and any ace could be profitable here. Now, that's of course not saying that you have to take the spot, but that's saying the math is in your favor, and I bet some of you who are watching this are probably pretty surprised at the fact that you could call off with Jack High and be gaining chips. It's not always about getting it in with the hand that's the best hand before the flop, Phil Hellmuth style. Sometimes it's about just having a hand that is good enough to go with the math that is there. Because we have the overlay of the small blind, the big blind, and the antes in the middle, that means you can call with a hand that has 48% equity and be gaining chips overall. You don't need to always have over that 50% mark. Okay, here we have a fantastic spot to defend. We're getting 6.4 to 1. We have a suited connector. Let's see 3 cards. And that is what I was talking about, an above average flop for our hand. For ace deuce, this is not an above average flop, but for 7-8, it most definitely is. So, question is, how do we get all the money in the middle? Check raising is definitely an option. If someone bets, it's easy for us to just shove all in. I think though that it's a board where we can't be sure that board Tony is going to fire out a c-bet. The drier the board, the more likely someone will be to c-bet. And of course, if it's heads up rather than three-way, we're more likely to be facing a c-bet. But given that this board is very textured, very connected, and we're in a three-way situation, I think it's quite likely that board Tony will not c-bet this board. And I don't know if Bezer is one of those guys who's just going to auto-stab. So personally, I like the idea of betting out and never folding to any further action. Even against an overpair, we're going to be flipping here. And there's already 148K in the middle. There's a lot of overlay. We want to get it in here. We want to gamble. So T-Mans goes with the check, and at this point, I think shoving is the best play. If we can make them fold anything, that's awesome. And based on how much money's in the middle already, I don't think we should really be looking to fold top pair with the straight draw at any point. Like, even if we didn't improve by the river, we would probably still want to call down because of how much is out there and because other people don't necessarily have to have pairs. So I like getting it in here, just putting the pressure on. If one guy can fold, that's awesome. T-Mans decides to call, turns trips, and they're just both all in. Queens, fair enough. Threes, what the hell are you thinking? Trip sevens, we're good. And that's full house. Let me know what you guys think about that hand, how you would play it. I think it's a spot where you could do a lot. And if we let out, I don't know if we get as much, but things kind of just played out perfectly. Also, I'm coming at it from a different perspective. I'm used to playing bigger buy-in tournaments where there's a bit more thought behind the play. I realize that in a small buy-in tournament like a $1 event, people may just bet because they like to bet. And if that's the case, you want to give your opponents as much of an opportunity to bluff as possible before shutting them out of the pot. I still think that check raising the flop is better than check calling, even though our fold equity is low. Because I mean, we're probably going to get all in anyway, so why not just ensure we see 2 cards for the price that we choose. Anyway, I think this hand history is going to go really fast, much like the blind levels in this tournament. So I'm going to wrap up part 1 here. Please let me know what you guys think about that hand, how you would play it. And if you like this format of tournament. I know it's pretty enticing, that 60K guaranteed for $1, and I hope to show you guys that this tournament can be won, that 10,000 is possible, that it's a challenge, but it's doable. Anyway, hope you found the video insightful and informative. This has been Evan for Gripst.com. Please leave your comments. Don't forget to subscribe. And when you're done with that, you know what to do. Take what you learned, go out there, and get stacking.
Yeah, we get it stacking. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. The flops I be smashing, them pots I be blasting. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. When the main event, man, that could never happen. The Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. Now you're picking up traction, getting action. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking.
Stack it up, cash it in, damn I win again. Many friends come to play, cause I'm on the internet. Better yet, I flop the turn and take a chance upon the river. I'll bluff you with the 7-2 offsuit, whatever's clever, call you all in while your chip stacks falling. Better believe the dealer, cause the game just started. Don't know the rules, you bet it all and then you risk it. If you wanna learn it, you should go online and hit up Gripsit.
Yeah, we get it stacking. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. The flops I be smashing, the pots I be blasting. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. When the main event, man, that could never happen. The Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. Now you're picking up traction, getting action. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. Ever since a young cat, wanna pocket stack with cash in the fast stack, crammed in the clam clip. Gotta get the action, gotta get it stacking. Dollars on the noggin, want a lot of transactions. Started as a little retarded, now with the knowledge, playing cards, flopping, bombarded, cause it was harder than I thought. Then I got on Grips.com, asking and got what I needed to be to me get it stacking. Yeah, we get it stacking. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. The flops I be smashing, the pots I be blasting. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. When the main event, man, that could never happen. The Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. Now you're picking up traction, getting action. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. Yeah, we get it stacking. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. The flops I be smashing, the pots I be blasting. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. When the main event, man, that could never happen. The Grips.com tell you how to get stacking. Now you're picking up traction, getting action. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. Yeah, we get it stacking. Grips.com tell you how to get it stacking. The flops I be smashing, the pots I be blasting. Grips.com